Mindful Living podcast with your host Sana, where we explore the honest, sometimes uncomfortable, but always transformational conversations around healing, self awareness, and the pursuit of wholeness. Now, listeners, today's conversation is one that sits at the intersection of very two different but deeply connected worlds: addiction recovery and mindfulness. And listeners, my guest is someone who doesn't just talk theory. He has walked through trauma units, built clinics from the ground up, and seen transformation where others saw dead ends. So, listeners, meet my guest, Trent Carter. Let me share a bit about him with all of you. Trent grew up in a small Texas town where grit wasn't optional, it was survival. From bodybuilding in high school to building a medical empire that challenges the norms of addiction care, he brings an uncommon blend of science, soul, and strategy to everything he does. He's also the author of the Recovery Tool Belt and host of the upcoming podcast, Beyond Limits, where real talk and real tools come together. And today we are not sugarcoating anything, listeners. We are diving into the hard truths, the hard facts about addiction, about what recovery really demands, and how mindfulness may just be the most misunderstood tool in the box. So, if you have ever wondered how to rebuild something when it feels broken beyond repair, this conversation is for you. So, with that, Trent, welcome to the show, and I'm really, really excited and honored to have you here with us.
I am too. Thank you so much for having me on. I'm excited for this conversation.
Trent, a lot of people think of addiction recovery, in strictly like medical terms, like there's detox, medication, maybe therapy as well. But you also bring the elements of mindset and mindfulness as being central to long term sustainable change. So, why do you think these two, they're often left out of the recovery conversation?
Yeah, I think it's one of the most powerful tools, actually. Your mindset controls everything. And maybe one of the reasons it's commonly left out is because it's hard to study, it's hard to get statistics on or scientific data behind it, whereas medications and things like that, we certainly can. So I'm a nurse practitioner, I'm board certified nurse practitioner, I'm board certified in addiction, and I very much am a proponent of the use of medications when it comes to addiction recovery and the mental health side for folks that are struggling with depression, anxiety, things like that. But it
Mm-hmm.
comes down to the mindset and being mindful and intentful of your actions and what you want and what your goals are. And if you can get those aligned, then you're unstoppable.
Yeah. And do you think another one of the reason could be that medical system they still see mindfulness as soft or secondary to the clinical process.
That very much could be a possibility. So I think that
Mhm.
when you look at things like counseling and therapy, cognitive behavioral therapy, things along those lines, and they're going to talk much more about mindfulness and being intentful there, as opposed to the clinical side. Then yeah, it so often does get left out, and this is why I'm a huge proponent of both. If someone is going through addiction and they're seeking recovery, again, like I already said, I do believe in the medications, at least to a certain extent, but then having that other side of it for the full circle approach on recovery, which would be the counseling, the therapy, to where you can talk through these things and you do get to change that mindset.
Hmm. Trent, talking about your experience, I mean, you have worked in some of the most unimaginably high stress environments like trauma ICUs, neurology, addiction clinics. How do you teach someone mindfulness who is in total chaos? I mean, someone whose nervous system is completely hijacked. I mean, they're completely clueless from where to start or even how to begin.
That's a great question. So Where to start, how to begin. I think first and foremost, you have to be active in what it is you're trying to do. And so in this scenario, if we're talking about an individual that's seeking recovery or to just make a change in their life, you've got to take action. And so
Mm.
there are so many resources available that are free, that are online or that are local or in the intro you mentioned the book, The Recovery Tool Belt. It is full of things like this. And so
Yeah.
be active and tap into those resources and seek help. Use your support system. Use what's in the community, whatever that may be that's local to where you are. And again, online, there's just a wealth of information. And so if you can take those small steps, it may seem daunting at first, but then you take a small step and then you reflect, you look back, and maybe it wasn't as hard as what you were thinking. So that's a small
Mhm.
win. And it's easier to take that next step. And all these little bitty wins start to add up and it simply gets easier. It seems less impossible now moving forward.
Hmm. And as you mentioned about the information, uh, I think yes, we have so many sources and resources for information, but sometimes we kind of it's there is definitely a possibility that we may get frustrated that which particular resource should I trust or not, whether the information given is right one or not. So how do you suggest to kind of have an approach towards identifying the right information, right resources, the credible ones?
Yep, great question. Finding the credible sources. So I think that it's always a good idea to pull whatever content it is, whatever resources you're looking at from many different sources. So that way you can essentially cross-reference and cross-check and see if they're saying similar things. And if you've got 2 or 3 different sources that are deemed credible and they're saying something that's very similar, most likely you're pointed in the right direction. If it does come down to something that's medical, then if you've got a doctor that you can speak to or a medical professional that you can speak to. And so again, I think that it's pulling from many different sources and cross-referencing. I can say
Mhm.
on our website, Renew Health, that everything that's on there, we have done the best possible job that we can to make sure that everything is credible. So any information,
Mhm.
and there's a ton of free resources on our website, by the way, for any listener out there, renewhealth.com. Go there, and you can pull from those resources, and it's gonna be, like I said, just as credible as anywhere else you can find online.
Hmm. Thank you. Thank you so much, Trent. I'll mention that in the show notes for our listeners. And let's once again, get back to your book. In your book, you talk about recovery tools. Not just therapy or meds, but systems. And we have so many mindfulness based tools like journaling, then breath work, meditation, body scans. What kind of role they have? Like, are they connected with each other, or each one has a separate role to play? I mean, are they like foundational or just like supplementary?
I believe it's foundational. It doesn't
Mm.
have to start that way, but I think that once an individual starts to take on these new I call them hobbies, habits, and interests, and it could be exercise, it could be cooking, it could be journaling, it could be, I don't know, joining a book club or going dancing, something like that, because these things become something that's very valuable to an individual that they look forward to, that they don't want to lose. And when you have things like this that are part of who you are, that are valuable, it's easier to continue on down the journey that, the correct path of whatever it is where that person's trying to better themselves or change themselves. So, to make a long answer short, I do think it's foundational. Even if it doesn't start off as part of your foundation or an individual's foundation, I think that it does become foundational to that person. And when you have a stronger foundation, it's easier to build upon.
Hmm. Absolutely, absolutely. And do you ever encounter, Trent, resistance from people who say, "I can't sit still," or I just can't compose myself. Mindfulness isn't for me." I mean, how do you approach that? What's your response when the tool doesn't seem to fit right away?
Certainly. Yeah, I encounter that quite often actually. So this is where conversation comes in. and communicating with that individual to try to learn what the resistance is, what their barriers are. So truly trying to learn that individual so that way I can tailor whatever the necessary treatment is to that person. But I try to convince them to give it a shot. What's the worst thing that could happen? Worst case scenario, you wasted, 30 seconds or 5 minutes or 1 hour of your life, and now you know it wasn't for you, and you go right back to where you're at right now. You don't lose anything. But what do you have to gain? What's the potential upside here? So if you look at risk versus reward, the potential risk is minimal, but the potential reward could be life-changing.
Mm, I agree. That absolutely makes sense. And talking about your journey, if you would love to, share, I mean, how it all started for you, Trent. I mean, although I barely scratched surface in the intro, but our listeners would love to know. I mean, where it all began with you.
Sure, sure. So, yeah, I'm from small town Texas, grew up in the country, and, growing up, I had a great family system. My parents were fantastic. My father always worked very hard, had multiple jobs so that he could provide for the family. And I am the first person that ever went into healthcare in my family. Growing up, I was always interested in the body. I was interested in
Mhm.
science. And so going into the nursing field made sense to me. I didn't really have a mentor that was close to me that had done that before, but it was just something I was interested in. So when I graduated high school, I did. I went straight into nursing school. And when I got out, I started working in the trauma ICU. I've worked in the neurology ICU, surgery. I've worked in all over the place. I did some travel nursing.
Mhm.
Anyways, I went back to school to become a nurse practitioner because I wanted to do more for my patients. I thought that what I was doing was great as a nurse, but I wanted to be the one that could draft these care plans, that could truly
Mm.
talk to a patient, figure out where they're at, and then potentially change their lives. And so I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do, but I knew I wanted to do that. So I went back to nursing school. I'm sorry, nurse practitioner school. And once I got out, I realized that where I was living here in New Mexico, we had moved to New Mexico in the process of this. I'm from Texas, but my wife is from New Mexico, so it's where we currently live. I realized that there is a ton of people struggling with addiction and substance abuse. And so I started digging into the resources, what's around, what options do these folks have, what do they have available? And the answer is very, very little. I mean, next to none. So
Mhm.
I opened Renew Health. And so this was the beginning of my entrepreneurship, becoming a business person, a business-minded individual. But then on the
Mhm.
clinical side, I knew that I could make a difference for these people that are struggling that had such limited resources. So now we fast forward a few years later and we have multiple clinics and we treat and serve thousands of people and we've changed countless lives.
Wow. I mean, of course, not only from your personal experiences, but a lot of observations and a kind of that um, responsibility towards community, um, around for humanity, for people. I think this is such a noble motivator to do something like this. Because substance abuse. I mean, it has been for long such a grave, I should say, concern at all levels across, locations, countries, generations. And that's something really very, very impressive, Trent, and fascinating because it requires intense self discipline, but also, time to time pivoting. Um, do you see, Trent, a thread that connects entrepreneurship and addiction recovery in terms of mindset or habit? I mean, do you find any similarity in there?
Oh, absolutely. And, it's funny that you mentioned that because on my personal website a few weeks ago, I actually wrote a blog on this. It's titled Entrepreneurship as Recovery. I guess it was about a month ago, but there is such a link there. I mean, talking about mindset and mindfulness, they're so similar that it's not even funny. So I would encourage someone to maybe read that blog if they wanted to, but the answer there is yes, absolutely. I mean, you've got to have tolerance for risk.
Yeah.
You want to move forward. You obsess with moving forward, right? Whether it's starting that business, it's very scary, and obsessing over how do I do this? What are all the little techniques? What are all the little things that I have to do? And then going through the ups and downs and the potential failures. It's the same thing with making a change in your life. If you're struggling with substance abuse or whatever the case may be, there's so many connections there.
Absolutely. I agree. I absolutely agree. And, just as addiction recovery is messy, in fact, entrepreneurship is also messy. I mean, we often talk about founders having sometimes imposter syndrome or, burnout, and that definitely, sometimes can um, stall them or maybe suppress them to even share that or ask for help. And in addiction recovery also, there is definitely sometimes shame or relapse, and then a lot of silence. So before we wrap up, Trent, I mean, this is really a very, very thoughtful aspect, that where does mindfulness actually meet people in those moments, not when they are succeeding, but when they feel like they have failed again.
So I love this. One of my favorite little sayings is discipline trumps motivation. So motivation comes and goes, and it's really easy to go and do the things that need to be done while we're feeling motivated. And the people that truly thrive, that truly have the success in whatever it is they're trying to do, are those that can stay disciplined while there's a lack of motivation, and so that's showing up every day. I don't care if it's trying to get back in shape, if you're going to the gym, if it is
Mhm.
trying to start a business, or if it's changing your life because you're tired of the way that it has been. And that's where establishing these routines comes in. It's easier to stay disciplined if you've got a routine that you can follow. You've gotta make yourself accountable to that. And then, hey, celebrate the little wins. It doesn't have to be some monumental milestone in order to be proud of yourself or to celebrate. It can be the little wins. Just showing up on a day that you didn't want to, that you didn't feel like it, that's a win. And again, it makes you stronger and it's something you can learn from that can continue to now motivate you moving forward.
Mm, absolutely. I mean, discipline is really, really, it's tough. It's hard. It is really, really. And when there are a lot of internal battles to fight and to keep on showing up for yourself as well as for others, also for your loved ones. So definitely. Um, and Trent, if someone listening right now who is in that moment, they slipped, they are in shame, what's one or maybe more than that, mindful practice or shift that can keep them from spiraling back into self destruction?
So you don't have to hit rock bottom, meaning I think it's easy to have the mindset of, "Oh, well, I've already started doing it, so what's a little bit more?" Or something like that. No, I think having awareness of the situation, recognizing that, hey, this is starting to become a problem, and you don't have to let it go all the way until it truly is a problem before that change happens. And so this is where, holding yourself accountable can come in. So having the awareness of something going on, recognizing it, but then what we said in the very beginning, taking action. You've got to be active in whatever it is you're trying to do. And so if you're someone and you're noticing a change that you're starting to slip, then you've got to take action on that. And it could be by yourself, it could be leaning on a loved one, your support system, or it can be through professionals like someone like myself or therapy or anybody. But again, being aware of it, recognizing it, and then taking action.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's really inspiring, empowering, Trent. And if our listeners, they would like to connect with you, get a hold of your book, as well as listen to your upcoming podcast, what would be the best way?
The easiest way is gonna be to go to my personal website, thetrentcarter.com. It's thetrentcarter.com. My company is Renew Health. Again, there's a ton of free, valuable, credible resources
Mm.
that are on there. And then the book, who is look, this is for anybody, whether you're someone yourself that's struggling, if you're a loved one, or even if you're neither one of those, but you see this stuff in your community, you're hearing about it on the news and you wanna educate yourself a little more. This book is for you. The Recovery Tool Belt. It's fantastic. I truly, honestly believe it's gonna save lives, and it's available everywhere. Amazon, books.com, pretty much anywhere that you could purchase a book. There's a electronic version, so if you prefer Kindle instead of a actual physical book, it's on there as well. And very soon, we'll have a audio version. It'll be on Audible. But,
Mhm.
yeah, the easiest way, just go to thetrentcarter.com.
Wonderful. I'll make sure to have all the details and links in the show notes, Trent. And thank you, thank you so much for this empowering, inspiring, and of course, a grounding conversation, because this is incredibly needed. And uh, I mean, there's a lot of parallel between entrepreneurship and addiction recovery, because it comes from persistence, presence, and the willingness to get uncomfortable in service of something better. So, thank you so much.
Thank you very much. I think that what you're doing is fantastic, and I hope that some of this was maybe informational, educational, or empowering to some of the listeners out there.
Definitely, definitely. And to everyone listening out there, addiction is not a moral failure. It is a human struggle that requires real tools, deep honesty, and yes, a healthy dose of mindfulness, listeners. And if you want to learn more about Trent's approach, his book, The Recovery Tool Belt, is available now. Just go to the show notes along with this episode on your favorite podcast platform. And of course, healing isn't a linear journey, it is a practice. Trust the process, one breath, one boundary, one brave moment at a time. Until next time, this is your host, Sana, inviting you to stay mindful and stay true to yourself. Thank you.